Chatham County Sheriff. I became the sheriff in 2016 after Sheriff Webster retired and was unanimously appointed by the county commissioners to finish out his term. And then I ran for office in 2018 and was elected sheriff in 2018. That runs through 2022. What's important in our office is leadership and community service. Every employee in our office has to go to leadership training because we believe everybody from the cook to the chief is a leader at some point during the day. It depends on what the topic is and what's going on, but that leadership role changes. And community service is something, honestly, Sheriff Webster started. That was an effort to be able to have our officers see people as people and not problems, and for our public to see us as people and not just officers. And that has been a huge part of what we've done right at this office since 2002, is making sure the community knows that we're a partner with you. We're not an occupying force over you. So the community service thing has been very, very important. This is a picture of our building. We're at 295 West Street in Pittsboro, and I like to bring this up as a point. We've been serving since 1770. Chatham County will say 1771, but the sheriff's office here broke off from Orange County in 1770. So there's a long history of service in Chatham County. The history of the Chatham County Sheriff, I'm a little bit of a history buff, was actually, the office of sheriff was formed in North Carolina officially under the 1776 Constitution. But our actually office predates that because we had an office here under when it was British control as far back as 1770. Elijah Kane was our first elected sheriff. He was appointed by the British out of Hillsborough to take care of the rebels of the South, who were the people who were not following what the British wanted to do. And he was put down here to help control them. There were 3 sheriffs. The first 3 sheriffs helped write the North Carolina Constitution. Horace Bridges was our first elected sheriff and our longest serving sheriff of 24 years. I think he was about 24 years old when he took the office, but being a sheriff back then was way different. I bring up this history thing for a couple of times. The word history means his story. It does not mean her story. It's not called herstory, it's called history. And so when we have history, it depends on who wrote the story. But we have some pretty good history in Chatham County because Chatham County had the first female sheriff in the state of North Carolina back in 1920. And I like to ask a lot of the females sometimes, what happened in 1920? Anybody know? Women got the right to vote in 1920. And so Mary Myrtle Seiler was a sheriff really for 2 months. Her cousin was Sheriff Lane, was a sheriff at the time. He got beat in office. And the next sheriff was supposed to take office in December. Sheriff Lane retired or resigned so he could run for a state office. The county commissioners unanimously appointed Mary Myrtle Seiler, who was his secretary, as the sheriff for 2 months to make a political statement, and so she could cover for 2 months as being the sheriff way back in 1920. So that's a pretty big historical thing for Chatham County, and I'm proud of that. We proudly put that on our wall of history down the hall, so something we're proud of. Chatham County also hired the first female deputy in the 1950s. We hired the first African-American deputy in 1963. We didn't get cars until 1972. So before that, deputies were driving their own cars. And I like to tell the story, guess who got the first patrol car? It was the sheriff. So it wasn't, everybody in the office didn't have one in 72. And we had our first computers in the 1980s. And so as we think of this instantaneous response from law enforcement that we expect today, I pick up the phone and I expect somebody to be here in 2 minutes. That's really a new occurrence. You know, it's not something we've done over history for a long, long time. So the expectations are higher and higher and higher each year about what law enforcement are doing and what we expect them to do. You know, if you called a sheriff in 1970, they're driving their own car, they're working their own jobs. I mean, they're not going to be here like what we expect today. So our expectations have changed over time also. So what drives us? Our mission statement is to provide exemplary law enforcement service, but the key word is achieving the best possible result. And what I mean by that is that we're really never satisfied with the result we got yesterday. We ought to be in a continual learning and a continuing evaluation phase. to make sure we're doing what's best and we're doing what's right and we're doing what's just. So not just getting the job done, but getting it done right. And so that's an important part of what leads us in the direction that we're going. Our core values are just words that hang on the wall if you don't work there. But for you to be in a leadership position in our office, you need to know what fairness, integrity, teamwork, leadership, community, and professionalism mean and how you exemplify it. And when you make lieutenant in our office, those are the things that your test is going to be on. How do you exemplify those core values of what we're doing? The sheriff really has 4 duties that he has to do. And a lot of times sheriff and chiefs are compared to each other. Chief of police and the sheriff, it's the same thing. It's really not. A sheriff can do everything a chief can do, but the sheriff has a lot more duties to do than a chief of police. The first one is civil process. And we hear that a lot as due process. You know, I have due process. A lot of people can't tell you what due process means, but due process is the reason we have a United States of America. Due process means notice and hearing. It means before the government can take anything away from you or do anything to you, they have to first give you notice and give you an opportunity to be heard. A lot of times what that is a piece of paper that you're given saying, hey, this is fixing to happen, and you have a court date to talk about it if you want to. And that don't seem like a big thing, but remember the reason we started the U.S. broke away from the British because they were taxing us without getting our opinion or letting us have input or having a recourse to address the king. So due process is a very, very important thing the sheriff's office does. When we're serving divorce papers, civil process, evictions, all of those kind of things, that due process is an element in there. Without that, we wouldn't have the foundation of government we have today. So civil process is something the sheriff is responsible for. Court operations is the second thing, the opening and closing of court. You know, today we have these lovely buildings, these very nice buildings. They have, you know, security features to it and that kind of thing. Well, back when sheriffs were started, they didn't have that. The sheriff had to commandeer places if you didn't have a courthouse. If it was too big, they may take over spaces. The whole idea of a sheriff opening court with those silly cries that they do, you know, all rise, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. That was like the public address system that the sheriff would literally say out in the streets to say, hey, we're fixing to start court. If you want to hear what's going on, you have a public input in this, come into the courtroom now. And that's the history of where that came from. So court operations is extremely important. We have 10 people that help us run up to 5 or 6 courts running at a time that work in the courthouse. So we're very proud of the court operations that we have also. Another thing that a sheriff has to do is we have to operate a jail. Now, we call it a detention center, but 95% of the people that we have in our jail are what we call pretrial detainees, which means they're before trial and they're not convicted of anything. And they have all the rights that anybody else has, except those that have to do with them being in jail. A sentenced person loses rights. We don't have a lot of sentenced people in our jails. They go to prison if they end up doing time that way. And so a lot of times the community will confuse what a jail is versus what a prison is. I like to explain it like this. A prison is like a hospital. The jail is like the emergency room. We get them when they're raw and when they're hurt and when things have to happen quickly, but they don't stay in there long. We can't fix cancer. We can't fix broken bones. We can set stuff quickly, but we're not a place that we can fix long-term issues in the jail. So a prison system in a jail, while they show you on TV, they'll sometimes call it a prison or call it a jail, but it's really a prison on TV, but we're really short-term. So we have a high volume of turnover. A lot of people come in, a lot of people coming out at the same time in the jail. We don't keep a lot of people in there a long time. And then the fourth thing a sheriff has to do, and this is a pretty broad term, is called keep the peace. And it sort of says that in the Constitution, to keep the peace. But that covers the patrol cars that answer 911 calls, investigations, crime prevention, school resource officers, all the other things that we do to try to prevent crime and respond to crime. In the Constitution, it just says we have to keep the peace. So that's a broad term. So this employee breakdown shows you a little bit about where we have staffing in. So 4.3% of our staff are in civil to do that one part. We also have animal resources, something the sheriff doesn't have to do, but we recently took over animal resources from from the health department, and we respond to injured animals. We respond to nuisance animals, dangerous animals. We do a lot of adoptions. We're trying to get to a shelter where we're a no-kill shelter. We're not there yet, but we're vastly improving on where we're at with that. So we have about 5% of our staff to do that. About 7% of our staff do courtroom security. 32% of our staff do detention, and the rest is keeping the peace. And that's a broad term. But when you see the number of people that I have that I say work for us, I want you to know that they're on those 5 categories. And so people run out a little faster than what you think they do. About Chatham County, we're the 20th largest geographical in the state, 707 square miles. It's about an hour and 15-minute drive from one corner of the county to the other. And then there's a big blue thing on one side of the county called Jordan Lake that splits up some of our areas. And so the county is pretty large. A lot of people don't visit all parts of the county. It is a huge area to respond. You'll see the colors in there that I have. Those are our patrol zones that we have. And we have 5 patrol zones. We also have Siler City Police Department, and you can see how small that is on the left-hand side. Pittsboro, which is in the center right, it's pretty small as well. And then Cary Police Department has about 800 acres over there on the edge, just over the line. There are other law enforcement agencies in Chatham County. There's a State Highway Patrol, whose primary responsibility is highway safety and traffic collisions. We have State Park Police, who only respond to state parks, about a third of where around the lake. So those are the major law enforcement agencies that we have in the community. Calls for service. Our deputies are dispatched to about 29,000 calls a year. That is no joke. 29,000 calls a year. That's 80 a day, roughly 3.3 an hour, or 1 every 18 minutes if they averaged out the whole time. Now, that's not really how it happens. Most of our calls come from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on the weekend. And so there are times that we are what's called stacking calls. Stacking calls means I have more calls than I have people to respond to it, and we have to prioritize which calls we're going to. And that has to do with just how many calls are coming in. Now, that's not 29,000 crime calls. That's 29,000 calls for service. About 20% of those are 911 hangups, when someone dials 911 and tries to get off the phone pretty quickly. Or alarm calls, about another 20%. And another 20% is what we call talk with an officer calls, things we can do over the telephone. About 40% of them are crime-related calls. So we are very, very busy. This is another picture of the map. Zone 1, this area above Siler City, we get about 5,100 calls a year in that area, and there's generally 1 deputy working that at a time. Zone 2, about 6,000 calls in that area. Zone 3 is 4,800 calls. Zone 4, which is our largest zone, also our smallest call volume zone, is 4,600. And the blue zone is a whopping almost 8,500 calls. Now, you may want to say, well, what's going on in the blue zone? Well, that's where most of our people live. And so neither one of these zones has more calls per person than any other. It's really related to the number of people who live in the zone. So Zone 5 is our most densely packed zone. It includes Farrington, Governor's Club, the lake, Bynum, everything on that side of the road. The other side of 15501 is Zone 2. That's our 2 busiest zones. So a lot going on in the northeast part of the county. Staffing levels, the total number of positions in our office as of July 1st this year is 177. What I'm proud of is that 36% of our staff is female. And that is unheard of in law enforcement. Most law enforcement's about 10%, but we're at 36% of our staff is female. And I'm also proud that about 43% of our staff are supervisors. which means you have an equal opportunity to be a supervisor in our office. This photo was taken just this past weekend. We had a special event that was working, and all 6 of these leaders here were working the event, and it shows you how many females we have out there on the road. We had a case about a month ago where one entire shift working, and this happened by happen chance. It wasn't set up by us, but every deputy working that day was a female. And so I think that we are way ahead of the curve on hiring females. I'd like to tell you I know why they're coming to work. I do not. I'd like to say we're doing something special to attract females. We're not. I have asked the females why they want to work here. I don't think it's anything that we're doing. I get a different answer from each one of them. I think a lot of it is what we're not doing, is that we're not putting up barriers for females. Some of these females are single moms, and we have to be cautious and think about childcare as an issue. There have been times where we've had snowstorms and that kind of thing, and I need a deputy to come in and work, and I've told them to bring their kid with them, and that we would put them all in the classroom, and we'll get 1 or 2 in there to help stay with the kids so that we can keep working. So we've had to think out of the box a little bit, but I don't think we're setting up artificial barriers to push them away. And so I'm very, very proud of the female staff that we have working at the Sheriff's Office. Our budget breakdown, and I'll gloss over these numbers. Numbers can sort of sound bigger than they are sometimes, or smaller than what they need to be. Our overall budget is about $16.4 million. Sounds like a whole lot of money, and it is. But half of that is salary, and another 25% of that is benefits. So when you get down to actual operating and what we actually purchase and the things that we're doing, it's really 2.6 million total budget. And so that number gets reduced a lot on that. We actually have the numbers I just gave you is our total budget. We actually have 3 separate budgets with the county. Our first one is law enforcement budget. It's about 9.5 million. Again, 52% of that is salary, 25 or 26% of that is benefits, and about 1.6 is budgeted for expenses. Those expenses include everything from buying cars, which ends up being about 600,000 of that is just buying cars to keep our fleet up each year. Then there's fuel. Then there's heating and air in the buildings, the operating expenses for paper and other things that we do with that ends up running out pretty quickly. Training, our training budget, uniforms and equipment. So that, although $1 million is a lot of money, when you're running something as large as we're doing, it doesn't last that long. The next one is animal resources. Animal resources is $1.1 million, 44% salary, 25% benefits, and we have about $273,000 that is operating expenses. A lot of that is care of animals. Most all the animals that come to our shelter are sick, and so we have a lot of medical bills, and if we're not for the veterinarian hospitals and doctors around that are helping us at huge reduced rates, we wouldn't be able to do as good as we're doing there. We're severely understaffed in a beautifully new building that we've got. Animal resources is our project that we're trying to get up and off the ground. We're proud of where it is, but we've got a lot more work to do on it. Detention is $5.7 million, 44% salary, 22% benefits, and 12% operating budget. $733,000 sounds like a lot of money. A lot of that is what we have to pay any kind of medical bills, mental health. We're responsible for meals. All of that goes in purchasing food, medicine, hospital bills for inmates and that kind of thing. So there's not a lot of extra in that too. When they say $5 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but the $700,000 runs out when you have 1,600 inmates a year. If there's specific questions on the money thing, I'd be happy to take those, but I wanted to gloss over that just so you looked it up, you know where we're at on that. The training highlights that we do a lot of scenario-based training. In what we're doing, we have a video-driven training that we do. We set up scenarios where we judge how the officer responds to the situation and can change the scenario depending on how they respond. So if you come across and you're saying the right things, it may go the right way. If you're instigating it and going the wrong way, it'll go the wrong way, and we can learn from those. We do a lot of de-escalation training in all of our training. A lot of people think de-escalation is just a class you take. It is not. It's something that needs to be in every type of training that you have. How you use the minimum force necessary to affect what you need to have happen. We do crisis intervention training, or CIT training as it's called, and communication, of being able to talk to people that are in crisis. A lot of times mental health issue is the problem. And I don't know if anybody here is in mental health, but mental health has really been defunded since 2008. And we've been dealing with a lot more mental health people in the community than we had before. So the mental health, I run the biggest mental health facility in the county, and it's called the jail. And so we work hard of not trying to put people with mental health issues in the jail if they don't need to be there, and trying to identify them before they get there. Like quality and policing is some other training that we do, responding to victims of domestic violence, being proactive in our community and building relationships. We think we need to be in the community before there's an issue. We don't need to respond to all the calls. I don't want you to know me as a sheriff. I want you to know me as Mike. If you know me as Mike, you're gonna tell me a lot more about what's going on than you just reporting it to the sheriff. And so we want all of our staff, even our cooks, even our detention officers, all of them are involved in building relationships in the community. Personal wellness and strategies of coping with stress. We have a lot of stress in our work, and we as an industry have not done a good job of dealing with stress. You know, I was trained early on, it was sort of, you have to deal with it. You got to not respond to it. You got to swallow how you feel about it, and you need to drive on and go to the next call. And we're doing a lot more attention of making sure people can have a mental health day, making sure that there are coping skills that they can deal with, and making sure that there are services that we can help people with if they're dealing with stress. Stress can add up over time. It's not necessarily one incident that may cause it, but it's over and over and over. Our divorce rate is extremely high in law enforcement, and a lot of that is due with the job that we're doing. Some highlights of the office. We've had the first female promoted to Major Kelly, Tracy Kelly. It works for us now. We've had the first African-American promoted to Chief Deputy. 1/3 of our staff are female. We've had 2 people in our office get the NAACP Humanitarian Award. That is a big deal for us. We've had national honors of our vehicle graphics and designs. Our cars are pretty, but they're not just pretty. They're there for safety. A lot of the stickers on the car are reflected, so at night you'll be able to see those cars in the dark to help our officers and community stay safe. We did get a national Humane Law Enforcement Award from the Humane Society of the U.S. State honors. These are all North Carolina honors here. The Domestic Violence Officer of the Year has worked for us here in Chatham County. The Police Woman of the Year worked at Chatham County Sheriff's Office. And Narcotics Officer of the Year for the entire state worked for Chatham County. We've had a president of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association. We've had the Detention Officer of the Year work here. We've had multiple people get the Longleaf Pine Award, which is the highest civilian award that you can get from the governor. DWI Mothers Against Drunk Driver Award. And this past year, we got the Sheriff of the Year with our work with Special Olympics. What had to do with how much money our offices raised to support Special Olympics. We were the highest fundraiser, and I'm very proud of our staff for being able to do that. We've had 16 deputies being awarded the Medal of Valor. This young man right here in front of you here, David Scott, just recently retired. He's actually earned that twice. And that is involved risk of life so extraordinary to set them apart. These are people who've done something that is outstanding. We've caught people from jumping off a bridge. I've had deputies jump into the water with their gear on to save someone who was trying to drown themselves. Things like that don't really make the paper. And that's happened 16 times that we've awarded that in our office. We've unfortunately had 4 deputies receive a Purple Heart, and that's someone who gets a pretty severe injury in the performance of their duty. We've had 2 deputies since 2002 that were shot. They were shot with the same bullet. One went through one leg and into the other leg. Both recovered from those injuries. The other 2 people that were injured by animals. We had one deputy that was run over by a bull and fractured his hip. and the other deputy was mauled by some dogs. And had she not been small enough to get under the car, I fear she might not have made it. But she was bitten by a dog and injured pretty severely. So 50% of our people that get hurt severely get hurt by animals, and not necessarily people. And I hope that number stays where it is. We've had 21 deputies and 2 detention officers receive a life-saving reward. This could be something such as performing CPR and getting the person back. A lot of these are Narcan, where we have found someone who's not breathing, purple, and we issued Narcan to all of our staff, and they've been able to block the effects of fentanyl and get the person back and back alive. So that's been a big part of that. So a lot of life-saving awards are given out to our staff. Every year we recognize our officers of the year and our rookies of the year. I'm pretty proud of this because this isn't my decision. This is a decision of the office. The office nominates who the deputy of the year is, who the detention officer of the year is, and who the civilian officer of the year is. And then we do the rookies of those same 3, the rookie detention officer, the rookie deputy, and the rookie civilian. And they go out for public vote. And so everybody in the office votes on all 3 of those positions. And if you look at this, 50% of the people who got that award are female. And that tells me that the staff sees that these are our best officers this year, our best deputy, our best detention officer, our best civilian, and then who the next rookies are behind them coming up. And we tell those rookies, we expect you to be the officer of the year next year. You're doing so good this year. So I'm very proud of our office and how they reward people themselves of the work that they're doing. Some challenges that we have here at our office. The biggest challenge I have is the growth. It is very difficult for us to keep up with the growth. Just this past year, we got 11 positions. Those 11 positions we actually needed more than 11 positions. But keeping up with how fast the county is growing now and how fast the county is going to grow in the future is pretty daunting. I think when I started here, there were 57. That was in 2002, and we're up to 177. So the workload is just magnifying, and it's difficult to keep up with. Some examples of some of that growth is, and this is nothing bad about Briar Chapel if you live there, but we're building basically towns in unincorporated areas. They don't have town taxes, but they expect town functions. And so people, in those larger communities want us to, work stop signs and crosswalks and those kind of things. And we're just not staffed to that level. We could be, but we're going to have a lot more people to be able to staff those expectations in those communities. I showed you those 5 zones. I only have 5 people usually working out there tonight answering calls. And so there's just not enough staff on the road. Recruiting a diverse workforce of highly qualified, passionate public servants. That recruiting has been made more difficult in the last year or so with all the negative press that has been about law enforcement. A lot of that was earned by law enforcement, but it's not all law enforcement. And so I've got a lot of people that were wanting to get into law enforcement don't anymore. And that recruiting is down all across the state, not just us. So finding people that want a job and want to work in this job has been more difficult. Meeting and growing often with rapidly changing public expectations. A lot of people that are moving here bring their ideas of where they came from, of what law enforcement should be doing. And I like to tell people that Chatham County is like living in a bubble bath, and it really is like a bubble bath, but we do tend to live in our bubbles. And the rural parts of our county expect something different than our more urban areas of our county versus our more wealthy parts of our county, the gated communities versus our lower income areas of our county. So making sure that we're meeting that expectation as well. Insufficient pay for the volume and quality of work performed. If we really think $15 an hour is what McDonald's is going to pay to work at McDonald's, and I'm hearing Walmart's paying $20 an hour, our detention staff makes $16 an hour. Our deputies make about $17.50 an hour. And so for the amount of work you're doing, the risk that you're putting up with, a lot of people are choosing not to get in law enforcement. And I'm not going to tell you that pay alone will fix it. Another part of pay is, can you afford to work where you live? And we will be better serving our community if we lived in the community. But more and more of our people are having to move to Randolph County and Lee County to be able to afford housing, and driving from there to work. And when you drive to work, you can turn it on and turn it off. But if I lived in your community, I would expect to see you every day. You would expect to see me every day, and we'll have a better relationship because of those. So insufficient pay is something that law enforcement's working on all across the state. I will tell you that we're paid at about the 50th percentile, but I think we expect more than average from our staff. So the pay thing is something that we're working on, and the commissioners have been helping me on that, but we've got to work on that some more. Overcoming the negative stereotypes depicting of pop culture and the news. You know, it's real easy to blame the news on what law enforcement is doing, but we rode the wave of bad boys and cops and 911 live and all of that, and we let people think that that's all we do is are in shootouts and chases and that kind of thing. But that's really not what we do. A lot of times we're helping people change tires. We're playing basketball with people, you know, the kids at the playground. We're not showing a lot of the good stuff that we're doing in the community, just showing the negative. A lot of times law enforcement have not made public comments, or they'll have no comment. And I think we've got to do a better job of getting out what's really going on in our office and in our community, so the community knows. It's not just about arresting people. Responding effectively to the needs of the community during a global pandemic is very, very difficult. While most of our county staff were able to work from home, we weren't able to work from home. The opioid epidemic started about 2016. We're still got the opioid epidemic. We got people every week that are dying from overdoses. We're still doing Narcan every week. And all that tolls on our people. You know, we've picked up extra duties during this, responding with EMS to these kind of calls. So that's been hard on everybody in the community, but more especially our deputies that are out on the front line. Some ways that you can help: share positive stories about our staff members. Better than money is telling people you appreciate them. If you see somebody at a gas station, pat them on the back, tell them thank you, express thanks and offer words of encouragement. That's the best paycheck sometimes that you can get. If you want to donate, we have a lot of community causes you could donate to. Our youth services fund, all the stuff you see here with the kids, anything that we're giving out, stickers or badges or those kind of things, that does not come from tax money. That comes from donations that we receive to give out to the community. We have a victim services fund. We have 3 social workers that now work with us, and they help us with victim notification and helping victims deal with crime and things that they may need. But they also have a fund where they can help domestic violence victims if they need a place to stay tonight, if they need food, if they get put out of the house and they need diapers or that kind of thing, some emergency kind of money that we do for that. We also have a fund for animal resources, general fund. That helps us with spade and neutering a lot of animals. We don't want to put animals down. We want to never do that for space. And those kind of funds we can use for that, and helping get animals adopted. That's money that comes from the community that we can give back out to the community. And then Law Enforcement Torch Run is where we raise money for Special Olympics. We just did a golf tournament this past week. We're going to be doing a chicken fry in Golston in November, and we're doing a polar plunge in February. I think last year was a little over $50,000 we raised for Special Olympics. That's a thing that's true to my heart, of seeing the enjoyment of those kids when you get to see them at the summer games. We encourage honest, hardworking, and compassionate individuals to join law enforcement. Whoever you would call at 3 o'clock in the morning to come to your house to help you is who I want working for me. So if you know people out there that are honest, hardworking, and compassionate people that want to make a difference, I want you to encourage them to come work with us. If they don't want to come, if they don't know they want to come work with us, encourage them to come do a ride along. You can come ride with our deputy. You can come do some time with one of our detention officers in the jail and actually see what it's like in the jail versus what it's like on TV. We want you to see it, feel it, and touch it before you come work with us. So it's not like what it is on TV. You can voice your support for our staff to elected officials. If we're not meeting what you need, Sometimes other elected officials need to hear that. If you want more law enforcement in some of the areas in zone 5 up on, that busy area, I tell people, hey, you need to tell me we need more help out here. Having 5 or 6 people out here at night really is not enough. You can volunteer or participate in the Sheriff's Training Academy for residents. This is a program that Lieutenant Sarah Pack helped me put together. And it was designed because a lot of people moving from across the country had different expectations of what a sheriff did, depending on what the sheriff did, where they moved from. And this was a way, it's a program, I think it's on the next slide here. It's a 7-part program where you come in, and as much as we can, we do a little bit of talking. As much as we can, we let you do what we do. So instead of just showing you a car, we let you sit in the car. Instead of telling you about the jail, we let you do a tour of the jail. We do a mock trial. We do tours. We'll do a canine demonstrations for you. We actually let you fingerprint and lift fingerprints off of the glasses and tables and that kind of thing, and let you do as much hands-on simulation scenarios as we can so that you can understand what really goes on in our office versus what TV says that it does. And I would encourage you, if any slide is important as this one, you can go on our website at www.chathamsheriff.com. You can sign up to join our STAR program. Now, COVID has hurt us a little bit with this because we had probably 30 people in the room that were doing this at one time. COVID hit, we need to spread people out. We got to be safe. I don't know exactly when the next class is going to start, but if you'll go ahead and apply for that, when we get that going, when COVID calms down a little bit, we'll get that program going again, and we'll have you in there and put you in the car for yourself. Lieutenant Philip Richard is our contact for that. That's his email address down at the bottom as well. If you want to contact him, he'd be glad to help you. Lieutenant Sarah Pack's on here too. She can also help you get signed up for that. And then for more information, here's some ways that we get information out. We have our website, chathamsheriff.com. We're on Facebook at CCSONC. You can like us on that. You can join that and follow what we're doing. We also have another Facebook account. It's Chatham SOAR for our Animal Resource Center. If you want to see what's going on in the animal shelter and all our adoptions, those are out there. And we have a Twitter page, Instagram, and you can always just do the old-fashioned thing and call us. And so our phone number is on there too, if you have any information from that. I am very, very proud of our staff. I tell this, and I mean this, you have the best staff in the state of North Carolina working in Chatham County. I'm not down in any other sheriff's office, but if you come visit our people and talk to the people that work there, we have the best people in the state working here. We're so fortunate to have them around us. I'm so fortunate to have great leaders working for us. And I'm so proud of the work that they do and accomplish in Chatham County. There's something special about Chatham. I don't know what it is. The community's good. It's a good place to live. The people that we work for treat us well. Our staff is good. I just think there's something special about Chatham. And I'm sure glad that I grew up here. I'm sure glad I met my wife here. And I'm sure glad my family's here. And I'm sure glad the staff is here to take care of us. That's all I've got for presentation. I think I'm supposed to leave time for some questions. So I'll take some questions now if anyone has any.
So I'm going to read the questions. We have about 14, I think. So I'm just going to read them in the order in which they came in, and you can answer them. The first one says, about keeping the peace broadly, do you also have an option these days for an officer of the sheriff's office to come by a house when occupants will be gone for some time?
That's a very good question. And the answer is yes. We have a house check program where if you sign, now we want you to be gone more than 3 days. So let's say you go on vacation, you're going to be gone more than 2 or 3 days. We'll actually come check your property while you're gone. We'll actually have a card that we'll have there, and we'll write down what we see. We want to know who else is supposed to be there. But a house check program is definitely something we do. Another thing that we do on night shift is we do business checks in the unincorporated areas. So if you own a business in Chatham County, I don't like to tell you how many times a night we do that, but we routinely check those businesses. And they actually have cards that they slide up under the door to say, hey, I came by at 3 o'clock in the morning and found your business to be secure and slide that under there. And we find all of that as being rewarding back too, because business owners do worry about their stuff being out there at night. And, you know, it pushes us to be out there in those areas where we're vulnerable in the. So I think that's a great, two great programs.
Okay, next question is, are employees trained in anti-racism, not diversity training, anti-racism? If not, why not? And would you be open to instituting anti-racism training for all employees?
So we have our command staff. I myself have been to core training, racism related training. We don't tolerate racism in anything that we're doing. So we incorporate in all the training that we're doing. We're not opposed to doing that kind of training specifically, but it's sort of like the de-escalation training. To me, it's not a one-time class training. It's a training that needs to be incorporated in everything that you do. While I'm not opposed to a one-time class, I think that we do that in layers with all of the training that we're doing now.
Next question, how many deaths have we had due to illegal firearms and legal firearms over the past 5 years by year?
Well, I don't know that number by the top of my hand. So if you say deaths, we don't have many murders. Our violent crime is extremely low. We are the 13th safest county in the state. Chatham and Moore County are probably the safest 2 counties. The other 11 counties are small counties in the mountains and small counties at the beach on the outer edges that count vacationers as residents or people that own houses as residents. So we're pretty safe. When you say deaths, I assume that means could be by suicide or accidental, not just homicide or assaults. But I can look that number up. I think it's going to be a pretty small number in Chatham County.
Okay, this is a 2-for-1. Someone said, will the recent census numbers determine the size of your staff, and how many people are in the jail at any given time?
2 great questions. Census numbers do not directly determine the size of our office. I wish it did. I wish there was some magic way that we come up with that number, because we would be growing at a faster rate. We're not growing at the same rate that the county is, and we're going to have an explosion growth when Chatham Park starts. And so I'm trying to prepare for that big growth that's coming down the line. As far as the jail, we have been averaging about 65 inmates prior to COVID. Right at COVID, it got where it was getting high. We have a 110-bed facility. It got up to about into the hundreds. I was able to talk to the judges. They did some things to get people out. We're only one of 2 jails that have not had a single COVID case in the jail, knock on wood, since COVID started. And as of today, we've not had a single COVID case in our jail. Today, I think we're in the 90s, about 90 inmates in there. Now that's average. So we generally have about 10 inmates come in a day and 10 leave a day. So it's high turnover. So not a lot of them stay there longer. How many inmates you have in the jail, a lot of times I'd like to take credit for having a low incarceration rate, but that has to do more with the judges' policies about how long they let cases continue, what they set conditions of the release for. And so our judges deserve a lot of credit for getting those people out of jail for us. So that's where we're at now. So right now we're about 90. Normally it's about 65.
This question says, do salaries, not including benefits, represent a living wage, $20 plus, for each and every employee? This will affect recruitment.
So if you look at Chatham, so living wage, I guess it depends on what a living wage is called. In Chatham County, I don't know how you come up with the number, but I think it's about $56,000 is what they say it takes for a living wage in Chatham now, or an average to own a house and that kind of thing. We're not paying our average employee there. It's $38,000 to be a detention officer. It's $39,000 to be a deputy. So you only make $1,000 more to be a deputy. And then our animal services staff are paid less than that. Are they making enough money? My answer is no. But I'll be honest with you, we're going to raise that in January with some funding that the commissioners have done. And it's going to go to 42,000. But at 42,000, if you still can't afford to live in Chatham County, they're still going to live in Lee and Randolph County. Apex Police Department's paying 50,000. North Carolina State University is paying $50,000 a year to start. Sanford Police Department is paying about 48,000. Pittsburgh Police Department's paying about 43 to 44,000. So we not only are we're giving a raise, but we're not even barely catching up. And so the pay is a big deal. Now, I tell everybody who comes to work for me that you're not going to get paid what you're worth. Because honestly, if you ask me, if you doubled everybody's pay, they're still not making enough money. But you got to pay them enough that they can live and raise a family and have a life here outside of work. And so that's sort of where we're at now. Good question.
Well, this question is, how is officer misconduct investigated? Is it done by an internal source or external or both?
That's another great question. Oh, all good questions. A lot of this is covered under our STAR program too. So I sort of glossed over that. We take every complaint serious. You don't even have to give me your name. We take anonymous complaints and we look into every complaint as a what we call a citizen's inquiry. Every employee in my office has a body camera. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to review those body cameras on that specific incident that you're reporting. We're going to investigate it. The first investigator is the supervisor. The supervisor is going to do a preliminary investigation. If it is a serious complaint, then we have someone outside their chain of command do an investigation. And if it's a crime, what they did, then we bring in an outside agency. Most of the time that's State Bureau of Investigation. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be a crime. It could just be reported that it was a crime. So if you said Mike Roberson stole gas, we might look into that to see if Mike got there. Did he get gas? That kind of thing. If it looks like Mike did do something like that, we're going to bring in another agency to look into that. So we actually do all three of those.
Okay, this person says, I live in Briar Chapel. Sorry, we're huge. Any possibility of a police substation in our community or in the nearby newly developed area of 15501?
Another great question. And my comment about Briar Chapel was not to be negative on that. I actually love that place. I'd like to live there myself. There are two things that are going on. We're looking at building a substation right at Andrew Store Road, where the new CCCC is. We're looking at doing a substation there. We're going to have staffing though. And so building the building is the easy part. It's the bodies that are out there now. So what Briar Chapel is doing now is that they're hiring off-duty deputies to come out there and work. And that works for a period of time. Another thing that I think we could do, either the county needs to staff us to have more people out there out of the county budget, or if Briar Chapel wanted to hire some officers from us, that we could contract with them so that you have the same officer working out there all the time instead of off-duty people. So Briar Chapel is almost the size of Pittsburgh. And so, you know, you don't sort of see it when you go down the road, but there's a lot of people in there. There's a lot of houses. There's 3 or 4 schools on top of each other on a 2-lane road. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in that area. And while growth is good, you know, the infrastructure and law enforcement being one of those infrastructure just hasn't kept up with the growth. And so that's not a slam on anybody who lives there. It's a beautiful place. I want it to stay a beautiful place, and I want the crime to stay low. So I am talking to some of the homeowners association about some of those alternatives of rather than hiring just off-duty people if we wanted to contract with a full-time position.
Here's another 2-for-1. Does the department have boats to patrol Jordan Lake? And what is the most common 911 call received?
Another 2 good questions. We actually have 2 boats. One boat is a really nice center console that we didn't pay anything for. Duke Energy bought it for us as part of evacuations if they had an emergency to get people off the lake. So they gave us $50,000. We went out and bought a really nice boat. We put some decals and a radio on it. And the only thing the county pays for is the person's time on the boat and the fuel that's in the boat. We do use that boat on the water a lot for safety, for for helping when we're looking for drowning victims, for calming people down on holidays and that kind of thing, to have a presence on the water. And believe it or not, we have domestics sometimes out there. 911 hangups, people that have emergency calls out on the water. We also have a smaller boat. Jeremiah Drive at one time had a lot of flooding every time the lake would go up. And so we have a really small inflatable boat that we can do rescue kind of things in flooded areas. Both of those boats can be used in other counties. So if other sheriff's offices have flooding or they have issues on the lake that they need us with, we can help them too. And we've done some rescues on the river, although the fire department has more technical whitewater rescue equipment than we do. We pretty much do flat water and flooded water, and we help the fire department do the whitewater kind of stuff. The second question is the 911 calls. Mm-hmm. About 20% of those are 911 hangups when someone dials 911 instead of 919, and they accidentally double tap the one. So 20% of our calls are that. 20% of our calls are alarm calls where somebody gets an alarm system and sets it off and doesn't call back in time for them to cancel it. 20% are talk with an officer calls, and 40% are crime-related calls. I would say the majority of our crime-related calls are larcenies or people stealing stuff. So our biggest crime in Chatham County is theft. And so a lot of that theft is related to drug use, and a lot of that theft is from family members. So a lot of times when we get there, they know who did it, and it's a family member. So that's our most of our calls.
Next question, do mental health professionals accompany officers responding to mental health related crises?
We would love them to, but the answer is no. The mental health stuff that they've worked out now works really, really well in urban areas, but we are so large and our response times are so great, they wouldn't have enough people to put in the car with us. So we do a lot of mental health training to be able to identify that. We have hired a mental health doctor to work in our jail that can help us with inmates that come in that are dealing with mental health issues that may not be on their meds, to get them back on their medication. And we fund that through the jail to be able to have a mental health doctor. The other thing that we have is that we now have 3 social workers that work at the jail that can respond in more serious events to help us deal with people in crisis. And while crisis could be mental health, it's not always mental health. Sometimes it's about adult protective services. Sometimes it's a medical issue that's causing them to have mental issues like UTIs or those kind of things. So diabetics can have issues like that. So there's a lot of training that we're doing on mental, medical, and all of it. So we don't specifically have mental health, but if you know anybody who wants to do that and want to do a ride along, I am way for it. It's a cost benefit is why it doesn't work too well. We don't have enough of those calls in a volume enough to hire somebody to respond to all of them. That works really good in urban areas.
Next question, are there, quote, undocumented persons issues? What and how?
That's a good question. Are there undocumented issues? There are definitely probably undocumented people that live in Chatham County, but if you're undocumented, the government usually doesn't know it. They're only documented after they've committed a crime or they've been ordered to leave the community or the U.S. We don't have a lot of issues with undocumented crime. The crime that we do, if you are involved in sex with a child, that is something that will get immigration involved very quickly. If you're involved in murder or hurting someone, that will get them involved very quickly. Or large volumes of drugs will get them involved very, very quickly. So we don't see immigration here a lot for little issues. You know, a lot of times you'll see on TV that they're doing this or doing that. They just don't have the time or the manpower to deal with Chatham County. And I don't see crime there being at any higher rate than any other part of our county.
Okay, let's see. What are the barriers to being hired? What are you looking for in an applicant?
A very, very good question. You have to be 21 years or older. You have to be a high school graduate or GED equivalent. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You can't have a felony conviction, or you can't have committed a felony, and you can't have certain misdemeanors. So you can't have a lengthy criminal record. We can deal with traffic issues and that kind of thing. Beyond that, we're looking for people that really have emotional intelligence. We're looking past what you've been trained and more of how you can relate to other people socially. And so I think that's the art in what we're doing, is trying to hire people who like people. I told people, if you like people, this is the best job in the world, but you got to like people that don't like you back. And you got to love people that don't love you back. And so that is the trick in the hiring, is finding the people that can have empathy, but at the same time, do the right thing when no one else is looking. And those are the keys to our hiring. Not everybody that wants to get into law enforcement can do this job. And so we want to hold our standard high enough that I would feel comfortable with any one of the people that work for me responding to call to deal with any of my family members in the same situation.
Just a comment, someone says, I did the STAR program. I highly recommend it, informative and fun.
That's cool.
Next question, is COVID vaccination required for all officers?
COVID vaccination is not required. We highly suggest it. We highly encourage it. It's free. I'll let you go do it while you're working. But we're not mandating people get vaccinated.
Another comment, someone says, I have personally experienced our deputies in action and have been very impressed. They are a valuable member of the community and reflect your mission and core values. Thank you for your dedication and leadership.
Well, I sure appreciate that. And any kind of things that you have when you run into that, if you'll send me an email, one of the best things I can do for my staff is forward an email out saying, hey, someone recognizes your good work. And I send it to every staff member. I don't just send it to that person. And we tell people that, to treat people like family in the same situation. How you would treat your family. I don't make my people change tires on the side of the road. But if you would change your mama's tire, then stop and help that lady change her tire. If you would help your dad do that, and you stop and help that person the same way. And so they really do that. They enjoy it. And they don't do it for the recognition, but the recognition does help.
Here's another comment and question. You don't tolerate racism. That is good. But do all employees understand the definition and history of structural racism and racism in policing today? And then you are right. It's not a one-time class.
Well, I believe all that work for me understand it. I'm not sure the understanding level will meet every definition that anyone else would have, but I also know that they know we're not going to tolerate it. Racism is something that I think is taught. I don't think it's something that kids are born with, and your past experiences and how you dealt with things are important to that. We're going to review what happened in every situation. I think our staff know that. The body cameras that we have on our staff, I expected them to push back on that a little bit. Our staff love it. If for some reason someone does have a question about what they're doing, they're the first one to say, come here, Sheriff, let me show you the video. I want to show you what happened. I want to tell you what happened. And I also tell them, look, you're going to make a mistake. If you made a mistake, be the first one to admit you made a mistake. So sometimes when our staff does make a mistake, they're the first one to come in here and say, you know what, I messed this up. And I accept it if it's not a mistake of the heart. There's a difference of the mistake of the head. There's another thing when it's a mistake of the heart. And mistake of the hearts, I can't deal with. Mistake of the head, I can deal with. If you didn't think through it or you didn't do something right, then we can learn from it. Now we can't keep making the same mistake. Can't make the same mistake. You got to learn from it. But we don't deal with mistakes of the heart, and racism is a mistake of the heart.
This says, do your officers in the courtroom have body cameras, keeping in mind what happened in Person County today?
So I only saw the news brief of what happened in Person County today. I don't know everything that happened here, but every employee, investigators, in the jail, in the court, every employee has a body camera. Those body cameras are running all the time. We're not keeping the recording all the time. So they have to hit a button to turn it on. And when they hit that button, I don't know if it's 30 seconds or a minute. I can't remember what it's set at. It captures a 30 seconds or a minute before they hit the button. And so any interaction that they have with the community as an enforcement action or taking a report, all of that should be on body camera. But yes, they are there. The court system also has, I think, more than 100 cameras in our court system that are running from every angle. There's some pan tilt zoom cameras. We have people in a room, in a security room, viewing those whenever court is going on. We don't necessarily have audio on those cameras. We have video. There's plenty of cameras in the courtroom, and there's plenty of cameras in the jail.
Okay, do you have a community relations board that would, among other things, help to determine which officer misconduct complaints are serious and how they will be adjudicated? Sort of like what they have had in Charlotte. It seems like having a departmental person making that judgment might not be objective enough.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it. My issue, I have no problem with a community relations board, and my board is every citizen in the Chatham County. I don't know why you would want to limit it to 4 or 5 people or 6 or 8 people that are going to be appointed by someone. We take every report serious in our office. We take every incident in our office. I regularly speak to groups and organizations like the Hispanic Liaison, NAACP. We actually have 2 of those groups in Chatham County. I regularly have talks with both presidents on that of any issues that they have. Anything that we find that could be controversial in the community, any kind of swastikas that are painted on signs or negative things that are put out, we go to those organizations too and say, hey, we're dealing with this. We've taken this report. So it's an open communication. The community relations board, there is one or something like human relations board, I think the county has started. So we will take that information in, but the people in the community, I don't want to limit it to 5 or 6 people making that decision. I want everybody to talk to me if there's an issue or problem or think something's not right.
Next question, has the Sheriff's Department considered co-locating with the fire service at their current facilities as a cost-saving means as an alternative to a dedicated sheriff's substation?
That's a wonderful idea. The issue with us is that we don't get to stay in the firehouse a whole lot. Our office is a car most of the time. And so if I make a substation, it really needs to run like a police department. So a substation that we're talking about up at Briar Chapel is going to be somewhere where you can get fingerprinted. If that's what you want to do, it's going to be a place where you can get permits if that's what you want to do. It'll be staffed. And our people will be able to use that as workspace as well. But we want our people to be mobile. Most of our calls are not people coming to see us, it's us going to see them. You know, when you call us to your house. So I need the people to be mobile more than in a place. And now our staff stays at fire departments a lot, especially during hurricanes or bad weather, those kind of things that we will team up with the fire departments and stay at those places with them in emergency situations. The centralized building that we need is more for like investigations, evidence control, administration staff. That's the main part of our building, but most of our people work out in the field.
What are the racial demographics of people arrested in a year by percentage?
I don't know arrested in the year. I'd have to look up that stat. I can tell you that the detention population is about 1/3 Hispanic, 1/3 Black, and 1/3 white. And it's about 90% male and 10% female.
Okay, here's a comment. Thanks to Sheriff Roberson for speaking and to Ann for organizing this. Another comment, racism is not just taught, it is systemic, not just about individuals, but the system, like the justice system. This is what they need to know, understand, and change. As residents, how can we help you and how can we help support you and your staff? Are there simple things we can do to help you do your job better?
Well, I'll tell you, and we've said this before, the STAR program is probably the best because I want you to see it, feel it, and touch it yourself. Rather than just believe me, go get involved with what's really happening in your community. You know, what's happening in Chatham County might not be what's happening in Durham. Might not be what's happening in Orange County. Might not be what's happening in any other place. Some of the towns may be different, but go out there and see it for yourself, and rather than believing what other people are telling you what's happening. So I want to put you in the car. You ain't got to ride with me. I want you to ride with one of my deputies. I want you to go to the jail and walk around with one of my detention officers. I want you to go in the courtroom and sit with the bailiff in there and talk to them and ask them these same questions about what's really going on in Chatham County. We've got something special here. It is a very, very nice place to work. It's a very good community to work. And I think the other things that I told you, we have to keep up with our staffing as this place grows. The people that are moving here, to be honest with you, have money. They're older. They don't commit crime. It's when we start renting to people, when we have transient people, that's when crime tends to be a little higher. And when people are closer together, the more spread out we are, the more wealth has crime. They don't report it. Does that make sense? And so we end up responding more to poorer communities because they have less options to deal with. So we're dealing with that. I'm on the Racial Justice Task Force, Orange and Chatham County as well, and we're dealing with court issues on that. The difference in a ticket for a poor person is way different than someone who has money. A $400 ticket might be rent, a light bill, gas, food, groceries. But for someone else, it may be something they pay just so they don't have to take off work that day to an attorney to go deal with it. And so the economic differences are the huge issue that we have in Chatham County. Now, it just happens to be that a lot of our minority people are in the lower income of that. And so that is a lot of what happens, but it's a lot more about money and economics of who has a job, who doesn't have a job, what conditions you're living in Chatham County than anything else.
We have 3 more comments, and I think we're at the end unless there's some more questions coming in. One is about it's because police cannot objectively police themselves without outside consultation. The whole county cannot do that effectively. And another comment, excellent, professional, informative presentation. And another one, this has been informative and beneficial. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and Sheriff Roberson.
Well, I appreciate all those comments. Is there ever any question about what we're doing or how we're doing? I will be as open with you as I can be. My email address is mike.roberson. That's mike.roberson@chathamsheriff.com. If there's anything I can do to make it better, if there's anything I can help show you what we're doing, I certainly will do that. I get a report card every 4 years about the work we're doing at the office. I'm extremely proud of the people that we have there and the work we're doing. I'm really thankful for you and your organization for allowing me to speak to everyone, to be able to talk about the issues that we have and talk about the good things that are going on and how we can work collectively and better together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It was very informative. I personally am looking forward to the next opportunity to participate in the STAR program.
Yes.
I would encourage everybody to take a look at that. And just for anybody who's interested in finding out more about the League of Women Voters, go to lwvodc.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ann.